Hi, welcome to Knitting My Shit Together, a podcast where neurodiversity and knitting collide. So it's essentially a knitting podcast, but I also talk about issues surrounding mental health, neurodiversity, however you want to phrase that. My name is Farah, and I am filming in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I live. This week, I decided to sit on my couch in my room instead of like all awkwardly on my bed like I was last week. So I think this works better, and I'll be able to turn the camera so that I can have just a better picture and it's not cropped weird. So yeah, and as I mentioned last time, I take notes and I will be looking at them, because if I'm not looking down at show notes, I'm gonna forget something. I don't have word for word what I'm gonna say written out, obviously, but I do just have notes jotted down. You might have just heard my cats chase one another downstairs because they are fighting. So, one thing I wanted to let you know that I hope you noticed through today's show is that I've done some formatting changes. You know, like as I record more episodes, I can just make some fancy slides and, you know, improve the credits, and slowly chip away at stuff like that instead of feeling like I have to do it all in the beginning, which will, again, lead to me not doing it. So yeah, it felt really good to take care of a few of those things. As Elizabeth Gilbert said in the book Big Magic, done is better than good. So yeah, I chipped away at that this week. Also, I updated and changed my Instagram name. I felt like I had too many names out there, like the name of the podcast. I had a different name on Instagram, a different name on Ravelry. So now my Instagram name and my Ravelry name are the same, and they are at Farah Knits. And a slide should pop up here showing you that. And please feel free to follow me on both. Also, just a note, I'll put a couple links in the comment box below this video, but I generally don't put links to everything because I keep my Ravelry notebook really updated. So if you're ever curious about something I'm knitting or what yarn I'm using or where you can get the pattern, just look me up on Ravelry and go to my notebook and it should be there. What I'm wearing today, we'll start with that. This is the Romney Kerchief by Jared Flood. I really like it. I knit it last year, I think. And I knit it out of, hold on, here's my notebook. Actually, I have to pull up, quick look at Ravelry. I knit it out of Brooklyn Tweed Shelter, 2 skeins, in the Hayloft colorway. And I really like it. Let's see if I can hold it. I really like how it knit up. I like the yarn. And I don't know if you can see, but it's kind of tweedy and has little flecks of other things in it. Yeah, so I was wearing that today. I knot it in the back, and this is kind of, I don't know if I talked about this last week or not. This is one of the things I want to fix. I want to get one of those leather things, because see, like, I don't like what that knot does. It just looks weird and feels weird. And if I had like a leather thing that I could wrap around, I could do that like here, you know. So one thing I noticed is there's those leather tape measure bracelets I've seen at yarn shops, and I'm thinking about getting one of those because that would also be handy and I could just wrap it around a few times. But in the meantime, I'm just keeping this tied. So that is what I'm wearing today. Okay, whips. We'll go to my works in progress. I have several to talk about and you will understand why. The first is my mom's Mother's Day socks. She doesn't watch this because I don't think she knows about it, which I think I said last week. So this is the slip stitch lines pattern. A screen will come up, it'll say the name of it. I am knitting it with Urban Girl yarns in the Admiral Grace Hopper colorway. So I had this really far. Like I had this knit up and then ripped out because it was just so loose. The gauge was so loose, and I think my knitting has relaxed. And part of how I knew that is I was gripping my needles tighter and I was on Addi Turbos. So I went down a needle size. I was on 2.5. I went to 2.25, which I really like. And yeah, and now I've turned the heel and I'm halfway up the cuff of the first sock. I only have really a few more inches to go before I put the cuff, but I really like how it's knitting up. It's really pretty. I'm just stalled on this and all my other knitting for what I'm going to show you next. So yeah, this is a work in progress. I hope to finish this up within the next week and then get the other sock cast on. But really what I've been, and again, this is my Gray Duck bag by Gray Duck Bag Company. You can find them on Etsy. Let's see, this is what I've been working on for all my time. So it's really even hard to hold up because it's just really large. And it's the Tassels in Amsterdam shawl by Katrine Schneider. And I am knitting it in woolen boon yarn using, I think I'm using the size needles it calls for, like a 4. Yep, a 3.5 millimeter US 4. So this is it so far. And you might be like, oh, it doesn't look that big, but it is because it's in brioche and it uses 1,200 yards of fingering weight yarn. So I bought 3 skeins of the woolen boon in the I Need a Hero colorway. And basically, yeah, it's gonna block out huge. I mean, it will stretch so much once I block it out. And if you look under the hashtag Tassels in Amsterdam on Instagram, you can see pictures of this blocked out all the way with the tassels attached. And I'm like, it's so beautiful. I can't wait until this is done. But with brioche, you have to knit every row twice, which you really start to feel in a new way once you have like close to 200 stitches on the needle. So I am a third of the way done through the last main body repeat. Which is like it's 32 repeats of 4 rows. So once I finish this, then all I do is some stitches for like a hem, like a little bit of lace work, just simple, like, you know, yarn over knit 2 together, kind of like the lace work in the body sections, in the lace panels in the body section. I think I do like a couple of those along an edge that becomes the hem. And then I block it and make 18 tassels and attach them. So I really was hoping this would be done by this weekend. If you follow me on Instagram, @FarahKnits, you would have seen me just a ton of pictures about this all week. I even for a day did like, where has my Tassels in Amsterdam shawl gone today? Because I'm taking it everywhere just to get it done. It's fun to knit. I love it, but I just really want it. And so it's kind of absorbing. I've kind of fallen down a Tassels in Amsterdam rabbit hole to the exclusion of all my other whips. So this is all I've been doing. But I really love it. And I'll probably keep knitting on it more tonight after I record this and hopefully finish it this week. Yeah, this is a bag, by the way, by the Bay Yarn Company. I got this bag. It's a canvas one. And I put some bigger projects in it. So yeah. So that's my Tassels in Amsterdam shawl. Okay, let's see. Another whip. I told you I have several whips. I have a ton of whips and no FOs. So I have no FOs this week because all my energy has gone into the Tassels in Amsterdam shawl. So just whips. Okay. So this you can't really see too much because it's just a swatch, but I'm starting a swatch because, so in the Mason-Dixon field guide number 6, I think, it's the one called Transparency. Do you see that? There is a pattern called the Shakerag top. And there is a knit along, like an in-person knit along happening at the Yarnery, which is a yarn shop in St. Paul that I like. And it's like a free knit along. You have to buy the yarn and the pattern, but people are just meeting up for 3 weeks in a row and knitting it together. And I really wanted some summer tops. And so I thought, ooh, that would be fun. I'm going to do that. So I signed up. So I'm just starting to do my gauge swatch. And this, I just have a couple of rows done because Tassels in Amsterdam shawl. And yeah, hopefully, I think I start it in a week and a half, in like 2 Sundays or 1 Sunday the group starts. So I'll finish my swatch this week. And I am knitting it in Holst yarn or yarn, Holst yarn. And this is the Holst Yarn Coast. This is the lead colorway. And it is 55% lamb's wool, 45% cotton. It's gorgeous. And I got 4 skate balls of this, cakes of it. And the pattern, I'm doing the swatch in US 6 needles, but we'll see where I end up if I like this fabric or not. Right now it feels a little loose, so I might go down 1 yarn. We'll see what my gauge is. I just have to knit more of the swatch before I know. So yeah, that's that swatch, which I kind of count as a whip because I've started swatching, and yeah, I think it is. And I will be, you know, working on it very soon. Okay. In other whip news, this is another swatch, and I am going to be, this is just a swatch. And so see all this, so I learned that technique for swatching for stuff that's in the round where you just drag the yarn behind so that you don't have to purl and you can get a more accurate gauge count. And this is my swatch. Also, okay, so this is something I want to talk about. I had a total swatch epiphany this week. So I was watching Christy Glass Knits podcast, and she had on Patty Lyons because they are doing a knit along together for Patty's design, the Roselle Tee. And how Patty does these, and she's doing it with Christy Glass this time, but I believe she's done them on her own, is she releases the pattern with all these red links. And the red links are tutorial videos you take. And there's tons of tutorials in every pattern. And so essentially, it's like you're doing a class online by knitting a garment together. So apparently Christy hadn't followed one of the red links, and I'm not doing the Roselle Tee knit along because it's just not something, it's not a pattern I want to knit. It's just not my personal style, but I bought the pattern just to watch the tutorial videos after I saw this episode of Christy Glass Knits, where basically she did the kind of gauge swatch we've all done, that I've done. It's like a little tiny square with garter stitch edging. And basically Patty called her out on it and came to her house and did an intervention, which is what the video is. And Patty explains, it's just like, I had a swatch epiphany, how we really should be doing swatches, that we shouldn't view them as something we have to do before we get to knit. We should see it as part of the knitting. So I knit this gauge swatch, probably the biggest gauge swatch I've ever knit in my life. I did a pre-blocking gauge and a post-blocking gauge. And I really like the fabric that I got. This is with US 7 needles, and I like the fabric I'm getting with these needles, so this is what I'll do. And my gauge is pretty close to what the pattern calls for. It's a little bit off, it's a little bit looser. So what I'm gonna do is, this is gonna be a sweater for my youngest Isa. I'm knitting them the box of socks, and I'm knitting them a sweater for when they go to college in the fall. And this is going to be the pattern, it's a sock by, it's a sweater by Isabel Kramer. I think, hold on, let me pull it up here. I have it in my queue. Oh, it's called the Malin. It's the Malin sweater, M-A-I-L-I-N. And I'm using Cascade 220 Superwash because, again, it's my child who's going to college, so they probably will not be doing tons of really great care of hand knit items. So yeah, once I finish the shawl, I'm going to cast this on too and get going on this. So this is just my gauge swatch. That video I talked about, if you too want to have your swatching mind blown, you should watch it. And so what I did, just to make this easier, is when I find a YouTube video that I mention in my podcast, if you look on my channel, I added a playlist on it called Mentions. And under that, I put the video where this is all talked about. She teaches you, she has another video Patty does that I'll maybe add to my channel as well. I'll add that to the mentions too, where she teaches you a cast on that looks like provisional stitch, a provisional cast on, but it's not. And you can only use it for casting on. See that thread going through there? It's just a cast on that you can do so that it isn't pulling in your swatch, so that it looks like, she said the goal is for your swatch to look like a square was cut out of the garment you're going to knit. So this is that swatch. And now I'm like swatching everything. Okay. I'm also doing some secret swatching for the socks for my dad, which I'm designing. More on that later. And then I also made I'm working on the second pair of socks for Issa's college box O socks. This time I decided to do a true afterthought heel. So this is with Patton's Croy in the blue striped rag colorway. You can get this at Michael's, Joanne. I put a little stitch marker where I'm going to cut in the afterthought heel. So I'm going to do a true afterthought heel with this one. And I'm going to try the short row heel as well, rather than the Fish Lips Kiss heel, just to give it a try, just to explore and experiment different heels. And then I have another one that is halfway done, but my needles for this are on my mom's sock, and I'm ordering more needles, but they're not here yet. So yeah. And I'll talk about needles in a little bit at the end. Those are kind of my works in progress. I'm wondering if there's anything I didn't touch. Oh, the Coziest Memory blanket. So I'll put the picture up of that. I didn't do any work on it. I still have that one square halfway done. But like I said last show, that's going to be a really long-term work in progress because, yeah, it's just using my scraps, and it's a spare thing. And you might be thinking, wow, you have a ton of whips. To me, this feels like a ton of whips. Some people it doesn't, but for me, it feels like a lot. But I'm about to start summer break. Like, I have 1 week of class left, and then I go on summer break, and I will be able to knit all the time if I want. I may get a summer part-time gig, I don't know, but I could just I really like enjoying my summer breaks and just really doing nothing, to the point that I get sick of almost doing nothing, so that I look forward to going back to school in the fall. Yeah, so, you know, I'll finish the shawl hopefully this next week in class and commuting to and from class, and then plow through my mom's socks and all the other things. But I'm really looking forward to getting that done, and I can't wait to show you pictures. And it's so hard to get a good picture of that shawl, so when it's all done, I will have someone take a picture of me, of it all blocked and with the tassels attached, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I can have that for next week. Okay, I think that's it for whips, and I have no finished objects like I said. So now it is time for our mental health moment. Yay! And this is where I like to talk about issues of neurodiversity and mental health, and yeah, how they impact the knitting community and fiber arts community and just in general. Part of my reason for talking about it is to kind of reduce the stigma around mental illness. I'm a person with mental illness, and I want us to be able to talk about it. So that's why I kind of merged those two themes with this show, in case this is your first time watching. So today I wanted to talk about two topics on one theme. And my theme I want to talk about is access. The first thing I want to talk about is knitting events and access there. So this weekend, this past weekend was Local Yarn Shop Day 2019, and as well as the Minnesota Knitters Guild held their kind of annual thing called Yarn Over, which I think is at a hotel or something. It's in one of the suburbs of the Twin Cities, and there's like a marketplace and all of that. And I was seeing all the yarns and all the people and seeing all the posts on Instagram. And I did my own Instagram post of, do you see that? Do you see what he is doing? Hamilton, don't attack the rainbow balls. Please. Please don't. He's incorrigible. So anyway, he's like a toddler. I took a picture that I put on Instagram where I said, where you spend a Local Yarn Shop Day 2019 when you're not digging crowds. And it was of me on my couch knitting my shawl. And then I mentioned that I wanted to talk about it in the podcast today. So right now for me, being in really crowded, loud spaces is hard. It hasn't always been, and I don't know that it always will be. Hamilton, I'm trying to talk about serious things. Okay. It hasn't always been, and I don't know that it always will be. And maybe it will on and off throughout my life. I don't know. I am not a psychic. I can't predict the future. But right now, it's a little uncomfortable and anxiety creating. And I know there are people who maybe it's always like that for them. There's gotta be. And I've just thought, like, how can we make things more accessible for neurodivergent individuals? How can we make events like that? Like, surely someone's thought of this and there's ideas. And so I asked people, like, hey, if you have any ideas, send them to me. And nobody did, because I'm not like a podcasting rock star or anything. But I did do some research and found some ideas that I just want to share. And if you happen to be watching this and you have anything to do with organizing any kind of events, that's awesome. You should look into this. So first off, Disney World, or the Disney company, does this. They have what's called like a Disney Access Pass or something. I think I jotted it down. Maybe I didn't. But so apparently, if you have a family member who is neuroatypical, across, and they don't just have it just for a person who might have autism, experiences that, it's for across the board. Like, I think mood disorders would qualify, you know, a lot of things. You can buy this, get this special pass. And here's what the special pass does. If like standing in lines for a long period of time would stress you out or be hard for you, they have a pass so that you can go mark where your place in line would be. So like, let's say when you go, if you were to stand in line, it would take 20 minutes to get to the front of the line. You can kind of mark that time and wait 20 minutes. So it's not like you're cutting, you're just waiting somewhere else and then go for your turn in line, is how I understood it from the website. They have quiet spaces, like designated quiet spaces all over their parks, so that people with those passes can go and just chill and rest and have like a quiet. I know sometimes like I can do stuff in short stints right now, but then I just need quiet, or I need to know that I have an escape pod. It just makes me feel better. And yeah, so I just thought that was really interesting that Disney did that. And there's other perks that go with it too. And I think you can look it up on Disney's site. I also, this woman talked about WisCon. I think it's like one of the gaming conventions. I don't know how all of that stuff works, because I have tons of friends who are into the cons and Comic-Con and all the different gaming things, but I'm not, so I'm not totally familiar with it. But apparently the one they do in Wisconsin every year in Madison is amazing in terms of accessibility. And I went and looked at their website, and they are. Here's how they are. First off, they have the quiet space room where people can go if they need it. They put out expectations for all of their presenters for here's things you might want to do to make, please follow these guidelines to make your presentation or speech more accessible for people across a range of spectrum, you know, across a range of abilities and diversities in terms of neurodivergence. And yeah, they're totally on top of it. I was really impressed. What they even do is they list in their website, these are areas where we have weaknesses. So like they just laid out the areas they couldn't cover. Like this could be a weak point in our plan, which I thought was really profound, because I think a lot of times people would do what they could, but then be like, oh, there's some areas where we fell short, or we can't make this work, but we're just not going to mention it, and hopefully nobody will notice. The problem is that then people don't get to make an informed decision about whether they really want to go or not, because it would suck to buy a ticket to something like that and have something come up that you didn't know would be a problem and have it be a problem. I just think that's really honest and transparent and owning stuff. And yeah, it was really, really cool. So if you go to their website, you can see kind of their plans and click around on their accessibility features. And then I'm like, how can we make stuff more accessible for neuroatypical folks and people with mental health issues? Hamilton, I'm going to have to take the rainbow balls down is what's going to have to happen here. And I might, like, during this podcast if he keeps this up. So anyway, where was I saying? ADHD moment. Okay. So like, what can we do for yarn stuff? You know what I mean? Because I've had interest in, like, you know, I hear about Rhinebeck. I hear about some of the Vogue Knitting live stuff because I think they've done it in Minneapolis before. I even would really love to go to Stitches Midwest in Chicago this summer, but it's one of those things where I'm like, excuse me, I don't want to spend a fortune for a ticket and then be completely overwhelmed. And I don't know who I would go with that would be okay with, like, hey, can we go to the shop for a while and then leave and go chill for a while? Just because that's not many people's plan. But I thought about it. I know they give, like, at Rhinebeck, they do, like, early shopping for, like, podcasters or something. And I thought, what if they had, like, what if you could register and for neuroatypical folks who maybe the crowds would be way too much for, to be able to have, like, even a half hour or I don't know how long before everybody else. Like, that could be really nice. Or if they had quiet rooms where people could go and you would get, like, a pass if you had that need. I don't know. If people have other ideas, comment. Leave a comment on this video. Let's talk about it. The other thing I thought about for, like, local yarn shop day or, like, Indie Untangled is, what if we did a virtual one? Like, for people who just leaving their house is not doable right now, or at least going to a big event like that, like Indie Untangled. It looks amazing. I would love to go. How cool would it be if there was, like, a virtual Indie Untangled that you had to be neuroatypical to register for? And that would be the key. It would have to go on the honor system. And it would have to be, like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, this is why we can't have nice things, because people ruin stuff for everybody. Like people would have to respect that boundary and not take advantage of it who didn't have that accessibility need and requirement. But for people who did, like, how cool would that be to have a virtual one, maybe, where the sellers there have, like, a password protected place where while it's going on, people can go online who are neuroatypical and shop. I don't know. And maybe that's all just, like, pipe dream, would never actually work. I don't know how that virtual stuff would all work out because I'm not, like, a computer programmer, but I don't know. I just think it would be cool if we brainstormed ideas like that as a community. And so I would love to hear people's feedback. So that's one thing I was thinking about in terms of access. The other thing I was thinking about in terms of access, so, you know, that thing I thought about when Yarn Over was happening and local yarn store day was happening, because I thought, ooh, should I bike down to Stephen B and go and check out local yarn store day? But I was like, I just don't feel like dealing with crowds. I even thought about going to the market for Yarn Over, but I was like, I was just having kind of an anxious week and that would have been overwhelming to me. So I decided to stay home and take care of me. So that I wasn't going to initially talk about that part of access. I thought of that this weekend. The first thing I was going to talk about was access and barriers to access for people based on socioeconomic factors, all the different intersectionalities we experience of race, gender, sexuality, socioeconomic class, and how that affects people's access to resources and mental health care. And the reason I thought of it is because I know last week I talked about the care I receive, and I get really good care. And I get care because I'm a middle-class white lady and I have access to good care. And not everybody does. A lot of people don't. And even though I'm a middle-class white woman who has pretty decent access, I mean, we have private health insurance and it's fairly decent, but even that, we have had to pay a ton out of pocket for my mental health care and treatment. I mean, even if we just add up my meds every month and what that comes to, I mean, let's just put it this way. The last 2 years, we have maxed out our deductible on our health insurance. And it kind of almost feels good once you do, because then everything's covered like 80% or more. I don't know, but like the therapy I'm receiving, it's great, awesome therapy. I'm really, really grateful, but it's expensive. When I was in the hospital even, I was like, man, like I'm getting really good care because I have access to really good care. And there are tons of people who don't have that access. So first off, let me say it's something that I don't take my privilege for granted. And I think about it a lot and acknowledge it. Second off, I want to talk about resources for people who don't have the privilege that I have. I don't know if that would be helpful. I think maybe just acknowledging it and maybe asking other people to acknowledge it and look around. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to talk about was NAMI or NAMI. People say it different ways. NAMI stands for the National Alliance for Mental Illness, I think. I'm going to put a slide up that's going to say the name. I typed it all out yesterday when I made the slide. And you can go to their website at www.nami.org. And I went there because I'm like, what are they saying about accessibility? So what is cool is NAMI has a ton of resources. Like they do free support groups for people with mental illness, for families of people and support systems and partners of people with mental illness. They do referrals to different health services. And so I went to their website and they have a free 24/7 crisis hotline too. And I went to their website to see like, are they talking about this at all? And they are. So they have a list of like the top 25 resources they refer people to who call in on the crisis line. And here's a screenshot of it. I took a screenshot of it to put up here. And, in it, it does talk about like different ways to access resources and low cost care and treatment. I have no idea what accessing those is like. So you could very well call and they could refer you to a place and they could be like, oh, we're all booked up for years. That could very well be the case. I don't know because I've never had to follow up on any of those, but I'm going to put the link in the show notes because in case somebody is in that situation and wants to access those things, you can. And I will put the link for that in the show notes. And I think they do important work. They do important work too about reducing stigma around mental illness. They, do lots of really good work. And the support groups, I think, are amazing. And yeah. The other thing about it, though, that I was thinking about in terms of access is, we all come from different cultural backgrounds and different groups of people. And I don't know enough. Like I saw articles talking about the African American community and but I didn't research those articles that much. I don't know like how accurate they are. Some of them were from peer reviewed journals, but some of them I thought, I just hate the thing where like, I'm like, if you took a sample, if you base this on 50 people you talk to, like, I don't think we can apply what you're talking about to an entire group of people. Also, another problem in access is a lot of times all the research done in mental health, for medications, for all kinds of things, the advances they're finding, they use white people. Most of the research done is with white people, and that doesn't take into account our different socioeconomic cultural backgrounds and beliefs and norms, which is different across cultures. if there's a cultural group where like going to therapy is really stigmatized, which is fine. And let me caveat that. I'll say how I think it's fine. Like maybe in that community, people take care of each other more and lean on each other and provide for each other in a different way, in a way that I don't even know or understand because I'm not part of that cultural group. I guess one thing that bothered me as I was looking through studies about access and stuff like this is a lot of them were framed toward, we want communities of color and just different community groups and cultural groups. How do we learn how to destigmatize therapy in that group? And so what kind of bugged me is it's like, how do we go into this group and change their mind to fit into our model? And I guess one of the questions I'm asking is, or do we need to change the model to adapt to different groups? Like, how can we provide, like, why don't we let the people within those communities tell us how they take care of each other? Ask, do they have any needs? I don't know. I just think I don't like the whole mentality of people going from the outside in and like, oh, we're going to fix this and make it better. And you could do things like we do, and that is better. And it's not necessarily like, we don't have to make everybody do things the way white people do. Like, maybe we need to change that as part of the model for mental health care. I don't know. It's hard. It's like a huge ethical debate because I'm also like, if there's somebody who's constantly suicidal and getting prescription medication would really help them and save their life, but there's a big stigma against it. And I don't even think it has to be across cultural groups. There are white families who have tons of stigma against mental health care. I just think I would want them to get that medication so that they would be okay. I just think I think it's something we need to be aware of. We need to be talking about. And there are people talking about it. And I found some of their blogs and websites, which I am going to put links to in the show notes. So the couple ones I found that I took a quick peek at that I was like, ooh, I want to come back and explore these. I didn't have time to because I did this at like 3 a.m. last night. There is on Redefine Enough, they did a list of 15 mental health podcasts for people of color. And yeah, several of the podcasts I'm totally going to start following because they look really, really interesting. And then also the other link I found was a blog called Rest for Resistance. And it looks like it's for, I mean, they cover a broad spectrum and I really like it. It looks like it's really tailored for people of color, for queer folks of color. It looks really good. And there's several articles there that I would love to read. And I'm going to, but I found it at 3 a.m. So yeah, that was a really cool site. And I'm going to put the links for both of these to all the podcasts and this Rest for Resistance site in the comment block below. Yeah. And also the other thing I wanted to say about the NAMI site that I liked is in the reaching out for help part. They do have different lines, like for LGBTQIA folks, for teens, for military vets, for like different groups, they have crisis lines, which I think is cool. And also the entire NAMI site is also in Spanish. They have a Spanish version too, which I think is cool. Yeah, so I'll put the link to that. And yeah. Oh, and also I'm just going to say this too. I usually put this at the beginning of the podcast. And I forgot to put it in my notes. So I am not a licensed therapist or mental health care provider at all. So do not take anything I say as therapeutic advice. Yeah. I'm just a person with mental illnesses doing a knitting podcast. So that's it. I just want to talk about it, and I think it's important to talk about it, but it shouldn't be taken as advice. You should totally consult with your own practitioners, or if you don't have one or need resources, you could call the NAMI hotline and they could maybe link you up with somebody. Yes. So I wanted to say that as well because I forgot to put that disclaimer in the beginning. So that's kind of it for the mental health moment. I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to talk about with that. And I don't think so. Okay, acquisitions. Not a ton this week. I normally don't, get a ton because I don't have a huge stash. Like I buy for projects. So what I do, how I organize my Ravelry is when a pattern comes up that I like, I favorite it. And then when I decide to knit it and I get the yarn for it, I put it in my queue. So everything in my queue is stuff I have the yarn for. And I try and just continually pull from my queue. Everything here that I'm working on is in my queue. And then as I finish stuff, it disappears and I might add something else into my queue. So that's kind of how I organize it. I do buy random sock yarn occasionally and things like that. But this week it was other things. The first thing I just got tonight, I went to a book reading and I went to the knitting and arts and crafts section of my local bookstore, Majors and Quinn, and I saw this book. It's called Mending Matters. The author is Katrina Rodabaugh. It is so beautiful. So I got this because I have several garments with little holes in them that I love. And I would love to mend and patch, but I don't know how. And I don't have a sewing machine. And I don't want to have a sewing machine. I want to be able to do it by hand, but I don't know how to do it and make it look okay. And this breaks that down. So like, look at the example of patches they do here. Like, I love that. And there's one I'll show you where it's a person wearing navy blue pants. So like, look, you totally can't really see that patch. But it's good. I really like it. So I got this because I'm like, I can now learn how to do this. There's somebody I know who I follow on Instagram who does this kind of repair, and it's lovely. And they use all kinds of bright threads, and it's really gorgeous. And I've often thought, I really want to learn how to do that. And now I can. Mending Matters. So my other purchase has to do with needles. So I have been using Addy Turbos historically. That's usually all I've used, and I like them. However, I did mention earlier, so I think my gauge has loosened up as I knit longer, and I knit more hours now, and my hands were getting sore. So I started just trying being mindful of how I was holding my needles and what I was doing. And I think what was happening is it was so loose, I was really gripping the needles hard to hold stitches on and keep my tension. So I think they were too slippery for me. And I'd heard a lot about Luca Needles, which is spelled L-Y-K-K-E. I believe they're from Denmark, made in Denmark. And they're a really pretty wood. I got the birch driftwood set. I'll show you. So this is what I did. They sell these at the yarn store in my hometown where I grew up. I don't live there anymore, but I grew up in Hastings, Minnesota, and they just got a cute little local yarn shop there called Muse 2320 Fibers, I believe. And so they had, I'll show you the other set I got too. They had the Luca Needles. So I had my mom pick one up for me and just get me, I thought I'll just try them. So I had her just get me a 32-inch 2.25 millimeter to use for socks, because I do magic loop on socks. I got them and started using them, and I was like, OMG, I love these needles. I love the point. It's like the perfect amount of grip for me. Like it's a little sticky, but not super sticky. And so I was able to not only loosen my grip, but there was enough grab there that I taught myself a new way to throw with my finger and wrap the yarn through my hand and do tension that way, which normally I've been just holding with my hand and wrapping. And it's completely revolutionized my knitting. I love it. So I went and bought a set. Then I was like, OMG, I have to have these because I am tired of my hand hurting and I don't want to do like long-term damage to my hand. So I went and got their interchangeable set, and there you can see it, Luca. And I figured out how to say it because I thought of Hygge, you know, Hyggge, and I'm like, I'll bet you it's kind of like the same pronunciation. And then I heard several other people say it Luca as well. So I think that is the correct pronunciation. And if not, me and all those people are wrong. But, so you can see I have several needles going, but this is the set. It's beautiful. And I think this starts with 2s or 3s. Yeah, this is 3. So they have longer ones that are like 5 or 6 inches, but I got the like 3.5. I got these at Stephen B, and I went and tried them. They let me like put them on the cable and take some scrap yarn I had and start knitting with them, and to see if these small ones would work, and they completely worked for me. And I like them actually. And it comes in this great case, and it has this pocket with different cords in it and little tighteners, and yeah. I need to buy a 32-inch cable because it didn't come with that. It only comes with 24-inch, and it comes with several sizes. So I'm gonna get a 32-inch cable so that I have that. I might get a few of them. And then the other thing I'm going to get is I called Muse again, and I'm gonna get 2 more sets of the 2.25 circulars for Magic Loop that are fixed sets, just because I'm never knitting just one pair of socks. I'm always knitting multiple. But I love these new needles. I'm so glad I got them. And then I had all these Addi Turbos, like a ton of Addi Turbos. So I'm selling those because I just don't believe in having too much. I mean, it's not like I don't believe, like if people do, that's totally fine, no judgment. But I just didn't want to have all those Addi Turbo needles that I wasn't using. And I really like these. So I went to the for sale group on Ravelry, and I have them listed there under Addi D Stash. So I've sold like 5 of the pair, but there's way more, and I have them all in a list. So if you're interested, you can go buy a set and I will mail them to you. So that's one acquisition, the needles and my book. The last thing I want to talk about is something I can't show you yet. I'll be able to show you in a couple weeks. So last week I shared Forrest Fiber Arts and their Lakeway sock yarn that I'm going to use when I design my dad's sock. And I mentioned last week that I had emailed or messaged Nikki, who runs Forrest Fiber Arts, and been like, oh my gosh, I love your yarn. If you ever start a like yarn of the month club, let me know. So she started one, and I signed up for it right away, and I'm really excited. Basically the deal is you pay and you get 100 grams of a sock yarn every month, and it's going to be a like club exclusive colorway. I think after 6 months, it'll be exclusive to club members for 6 months. You get that plus a mini to go with it that's coordinating, and it's a surprise every month. And it will show up, and I should be getting my first shipment in early May when it starts. And so I'm really excited. If you want to join it, go to forrestfiberarts.com and you can join. And it's cool because you don't have to commit. You can go for a month. I'm just going endlessly because I love her yarn, and having yarn sent to me like that can push me out of my comfort zone and force me to try colors and colorways that I wouldn't normally try. So some stuff I want to just get my earth tones and blacks and grays and neutrals, but then that's a way that I can like push myself a little bit to try new things. And even if they are still neutrals that we get 1 month, that's okay. I don't know what they're going to be. You'll see in a couple weeks when I get it. I'm just excited for it, and I'm really looking forward to getting that first shipment. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I'm going to check one more note thing on my laptop to make sure I touched base on all of that. I'll put the links that I need in the show notes, which will be right below. Again, it's not going to be links to everything, just the stuff that I really want to share. I'll do a link to the Yarn of the Month, Forrest Fiber Arts Yarn of the Month sign up, and some of the mental health resources. And I really want to have a conversation about this. So like, I can't speak for everybody. Obviously, I can only speak from my lived experience and perspective. And I'm sure there's people who have all kinds of ideas that I haven't even thought of about access. So yeah, if you would like to join that conversation with me and have a conversation with me, comment in the show notes below. And that way I would love to hear your ideas. And if you're a person, if like, I don't know how somebody who organizes a big knitting event would see this, but if by some rando chance somebody who does organize a big knitting event sees this, comment too. We would all love to give you ideas. Yeah. So that's all. And if you thanks for joining again. If you're back for the second week, I had 4 subscribers last week. Woo, woo. But if you're back for the second week, thank you for joining me. If you're brand new, welcome. Please like, comment, subscribe below. And I will see you next week or next time. I don't know how often I'll record. Right now it's weekly. We'll see. I'll see you next time. Bye.